Good afternoon guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're new to the channel, my name's Alex, and today we're going to be talking about my Lexus RC-F. I've had it for just about 12 months and I've driven it quite a few miles. Well, actually not that many, maybe 5,000 Ks in 12 months, but nevertheless, plenty of time to get used to the car. So today we're going to talk about the 5 likes and dislikes of the Lexus RC-F. If you hang around towards the end of the video, there's going to be a little Easter egg there, as we're going to discuss an upcoming tour to Germany. And you know, when we say Germany, that's going to include the Nurburgring. So we'll run into those details towards the end of the video. But for now, let's get cracking. We're going to get things started with the dislikes, and my number one dislike in this car has got to be the little trackpad they give you here to control the cursor and your selections on the infotainment screen. Now obviously this isn't a touch screen, and it shouldn't be either because it's way too far away, it wouldn't make sense. But Lexus used to use like a little mouse controller that worked a whole lot better. They've now moved to this touch sensitive pad where you just draw your finger across it to move the selection on the screen. But the problem is that it's really disconnected, and so when you move your finger, the cursor sometimes does weird and wonderful things because it doesn't move a cursor on the actual screen. What it does is it moves a selection. So for example, if you have a keyboard with a few letters lit up, a slight move of the finger will move from one letter to the next letter, and that could be this far apart, you know, where a letter's next to each other, or it could be the width of the whole screen where you're going to the other side of the keyboard. So it's really counterintuitive. For me, it doesn't really work, and it's my very first dislike of the Lexus. Dislike number 2, the seats. Well, actually not the seats, but the speed at which the seats move. So this car comes with 2 back seats. If you wanted to carry some passengers that didn't have legs, for example. But anyway, to get those passengers into the back seat, you need to fold the front seat forward. And this is how that process works. So we come along to the car, obviously open it up, and we have to take this little leather latch off to get the seatbelt out of the way. And then we pull a lever right at the back here. Now check out how slow that seat moves forward. I mean, what gives Lexus? I'm sure somewhere in your factory you have electric motors that can go a whole lot quicker than that. There's just no excuse, and in the meantime your passengers have become completely bored. And then of course, getting back in, it's the same problem. The seats take forever. Oh my God.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
One cool feature though is that if you are sitting in the back and you do happen to have a pair of legs on you, the seat won't squish you. So it's moving back, touches my knees, and keeps moving. Oh my God, stop. Okay, all right. You have to give it quite a nudge and it moves a tiny bit forward. That's not helpful at all. Add that to the list of dislikes. Okay, dislike number 3, and it has to do with the 8-speed automatic transmission. So this is not a dual clutch transmission, but what it does do is it locks up its torque converter in 2nd gear, and it does give you lightning fast gear changes, which is all great. But it has this funny issue in 2nd gear when that torque converter locks up, and you can actually feel it, and sometimes it feels like another gear change. Now it only does this in manual mode, so if you're driving like I am now in D, it's fine. It just puts along and does its own thing. You don't really notice it, generally because it's changing quite early. But if you go into manual mode and you shift from 1st into 2nd, you can actually feel this very pronounced step in the RPMs. I'll see if I can demonstrate it for you. So we'll turn down this street here, we'll put the shifter over into M, and we will go down to 2nd gear and 1st gear. Okay, so hopefully you can pick this up in the audio. We're in 1st gear, no worries, 2nd, there it is. It's like a little hiccup as that torque converter locks up. Look, it's not a huge deal, I guess, and you can kind of bypass it by letting the revs go a bit higher, but it's just a bit annoying. And I don't know what it looks like from the outside of the car, but certainly from the inside of the car, you can feel it, and you have to try and drive around it. And I was hoping that Lexus would be able to work around something like that. I'm told that not all RCFs do it, which does make me wonder a little bit, but it's not an uncommon issue, so that there isn't something wrong with the car. But yeah, that's number 3. Dislike number 4, and unfortunately we're back to the seats again, which really kills me because they're beautiful seats. But in this car, they are obviously heated and they have vented seats. But listen to the sound the fan makes on the vented seats. Now, I'm not sure how much of that gets picked up on camera, but in the cabin here, it's actually really loud. I've been driving along a few times, started to look around wondering what on earth is wrong with my car, because I can hear this like electric buzz or hum. And usually I wouldn't mind, you've got the sound of the engine, you've got some radio tunes going or whatever it is, but this one seems to cut through all of that. And if you've got the vented seats on high, you can really hear it. Really weird. And so we come to the final dislike, number 5 for the Lexus RC-F. And this is a big one. No, literally, it's a big one. It's the weight of the car. So this thing made the headlines when it got released for all the wrong reasons, because it weighed so much. And although it's got a whole bunch of power, which gets it off the line fairly quickly, I think it does 0 to 100 in around 4.5 seconds, which is nothing to sneeze at. But it's when you're going around the corners that you really feel it. Of course, the torque vectoring diff that it has does help a lot in getting that power to the ground. But let's just get it into manual gear. We'll go one of these tight corners. 3rd gear, 2nd gear, really chuck it in. And you can just feel the front really push. And it's not as nimble as its BMW or Mercedes counterparts. So the weight of this thing is an issue if you're going to do any sort of spirited driving, definitely any track driving. Look, if it's a normal day-to-day car and it's going out for country runs or long trips down south, sort of GT style, it's not an issue. But it is something that you notice every now and then when you're trying to keep up with an M3 or a C63. So that is number 5 on my list of dislikes. So those are 5 of my dislikes of the Lexus RC-F. Now let's move on to the good stuff. Let's talk about my favorite 5 items of the Lexus RC-F, and we're going to start with the exterior styling. Now I know it's very polarizing, but just look at it. When this first came out, it was obviously preceded by the RC350, which carries very, very similar styling cues, and it was already dividing the car enthusiasts at that time. But it doesn't matter from which angle you look at the car, it's just exquisite in the way that the lines travel down the bodywork. It's got sharpness in some areas, it's got curves in other areas. The headlights, I think the headlights are probably one of my favorite things. The way that they're actually concave, carrying those 3 LEDs and then a separate daytime running light and indicator underneath it. It's just really forward thinking for the time. And then of course we move on to the grille, which, yeah, it's pretty enormous. It resembles a whale shark or something like that. But I think it suits the car, that the car is loud and shouty, the styling is really out there and forward thinking. So yeah, it needs a crazy grille, it needs crazy lines, it needs crazy vents down the side. And just have a look at this view. It's a pretty fat behind. I personally think it's beautiful, but each to their own. But it's my number 1 like. So aside from its looks, the second thing that I love about the Lexus RC-F has got to be its engine. This 5-litre V8 power plant is just a work of art. It produces 351 kilowatts, and like I said before, can get the car from 0 to 100 in around 4.5 seconds, which is definitely not slow. But the thing I love most about the engine is the sound it produces. When you get to the high RPM, it's really reminiscent of that V10 in the LFA. Of course, nothing sounds that good, but it does give that sort of raw and visceral experience. Take a listen. How good does that sound? And the beauty is, when you're not going full throttle and you're just burbling around town, it's got that beautiful V8 rumble that, you know, everyone loves and certainly gets a few looks as you go around. So that's definitely got to be on my list of likes. Number 3 of my likes has got to be the dashboard. It really is quite beautiful and a work of art, the way that it's integrated into the whole dashboard. You know, back in 2014, 2015, this was quite ahead of its time. So these days, obviously Audi has its virtual cockpit, which is obviously the next level. But back then, this was really nice. And I think even today, this keeps the car very modern indeed. And I just love the fact that you've got easy access to all of the car's features through here, and it's really easy to navigate through. And I love how the rev counter changes depending on the different drive modes that you're in. It really brings you into the driving experience and makes it an event. Well done, Lexus. So the fourth thing I love about my Lexus RC-F, and I really couldn't do this without mentioning it, is the interior, specifically the seats. And I know I was hanging a bit of shit on them before in terms of their functionality. They move slowly and the vented fan is too noisy, but the seats themselves are absolutely gorgeous and they're super comfortable and super supportive, and I still think that they're one of the best seats in the market at the moment. I mean, just have a look at some of the design work that goes into these seats, including the stitching and the embossing, and even the material that's used is just perfect. I especially love the little touches of aluminium here around what would normally be a pass-through for a racing harness, but it should be noted that they're actually quite useless for that function because there's a mesh inside, so you can't actually pass a harness through them, but they look pretty cool nonetheless. And that brings us on to the final and fifth thing that I love about the Lexus RC-F, and it has to be the electronically operated rear wing. Now, of course, it's quite small and it doesn't stick up a whole lot. It doesn't act like an air brake or anything like that, so it probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference in terms of stability. You probably have to be going quite fast for it to be taking effect. But I just love the fact that it pops up and down as you drive along. You know, you get to 80 and it pops up, and you go down below 50 and it slips back down again. Keeps the kids entertained for hours in the car that's following you, that's for sure. But yeah, it's just a really nice little touch, and I wish more cars employed active aero like that a bit more. So there we go, guys. Those are the 5 likes and dislikes of my 2014 Lexus RC-F. Like I said before, I've had the car for about 12 months, and for anyone that knows me, that's actually a pretty good run. I usually change my cars fairly frequently, but as much as I love this car and have enjoyed it, this one too will be heading to market very shortly. What's coming next? I actually haven't decided yet, but whatever it is, I'll let you guys in on it, that's for sure. So as promised, if you've stuck it out this long, here's a little Easter egg for you. In a couple of weeks' time, we are doing a 10-day lightning tour of Germany and a little bit of the Netherlands. And this is going to be sort of a travel vlog for the car enthusiast. This trip is going to be about the more obscure museums and car collections that exist. But what trip would be complete without a stop at the Nurburgring? So we're going to include that as well, and that's going to be pretty exciting. So the plan goes a little bit like this. We fly into Frankfurt, we drive down to Heidelberg, and we're going to go to the Technik Museum in Speyer, where there is a festival called Brazeltag. Now, I don't know a lot about this, but it sounds like a bit of a Revhead fest, so that sounds cool. Then we are going to head across towards Stuttgart and stay at a place called the V8 Hotel in one of those themed rooms, so that'll be pretty cool to see which one we get. I already know, but you don't. We're also going to look at the motor world that's in that region. Then we're going to switch cars and get something that's a bit more suitable for the Autobahn, and we're going to jump on the A1 and head straight to the Nurburgring. Once we arrive, we've got a taxi lap in the McLaren 600 LT, which I cannot wait for. I'm super excited for that. And the next day we're going to do a couple of laps of the Nurburgring ourselves in like a little Renault Clio or something like that, and we'll tour some of the area as well. After that, we're heading up towards Düsseldorf, and we're going to stop at the Schumacher go-kart track. We're going to stop at Motor World in Köln, and then we're going to head up to Düsseldorf, where there is another museum called Classic Remise. Then we're going to jump on a train, head over to the Netherlands, and have a look at the Louvre Museum. So heaps and heaps of stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if that sounds like something that would interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the cool stuff coming up in the next few weeks. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that like button, and I will see you next time in Germany. Auf Wiedersehen!